how to find and qualify great tenant buyers. I mean, if you spent any time in the real estate investing world, you've either experienced or you've heard of horror stories with bad tenants, and it's not fun. From everything from not paying rent to ghosting you to wrecking your property. And we could have just a whole episode on sharing war stories of, well, you think yours was bad. Let me tell you about mine, like that sort of thing. I'm sure we could do that. Maybe we should do that. Maybe that would be a good venting process for a lot of people. But today, I mean, you'll hear a couple stories, but we won't go into that too much. But yeah, I'm so excited that you're on with me today for this topic and here in this Facebook group. I hope that you're finding this new Facebook group of value and just opportunity for people all across the country to engage in rent own dialogue, creative financing dialogue, helping, supporting, learning, growing together. And that's really my goal of this. So, how to find and qualify great tenant buyers. Sashi, welcome. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Peter, good to see you again. Jeff, hey. Lena, welcome from my hometown. And yeah, so okay, I'm not going to do any more shoutouts because I know that's annoying after a while. So, how to find and qualify great tenant buyers. As I was diving into this and thinking about it, it's really two different subject matters, right? Because how to find them in the first place, that's a whole marketing piece and it's super important. Um, I'm not going to go a ton into that today because everyone's got their different ways of marketing in creative ways. If you want me to do a separate live call just on marketing to find tenants, I will do that. Just write a note in there, just say all caps marketing live, something like that, and we'll do something like that because I mean we could spend an hour just on that today. But what I want to talk about is the point where you get clients into. So let's say that you've marketed already and you're bringing clients in, and it's like, how do you discern if these are good clients or not good clients? So the reason why I am telling you that is because you can get bad clients. So I'll just give you one example of a client that I thought was okay. If you saw any of my previews from before, earlier today or earlier in the week, I talked about people with cash and a pulse can be really tempting if your property is vacant and if you're tired of dealing with tenants. And so I don't think I was necessarily at that spot with this couple, but they had really good uh, references. And so I talked with their landlord and previous landlord. I prefer a previous landlord, and I'll go into that a little bit as I walk through this sheet here that you'll see. That's my sheet that I go through. And I'm pretty sure that these were fake landlords. I think they were friends posing as a landlord and told me exactly what I wanted to hear. Have you ever experienced that? Or have you been on the other end where you were trying to get rid of a tenant and you've told a new potential landlord whatever they want to hear? So these are all things that, we hope to avoid. And, but I've had, bad tenants and those couple that, you know, uh, that I'm pretty sure their landlord was fake. They ended up being horrible tenants. But on the bright side, even though I spent thousands of dollars cleaning up after them and months of missed rent, I learned a ton of stuff. And so I hope some of that ton of stuff is what you can get out of today. So yeah, the whole idea of finding and qualifying these tenant buyers, the qualifying can be the hard part because you got to do a bunch of due diligence, but it's worth it because you don't want to have to deal with these tenants 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months down the road. You want to do the best job as you possibly can. So I start by marketing out there. And like I said, I wasn't going to go very deep into this, but I've got a website, a Facebook group for my rent own properties. Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, street signs, word of mouth, all that sort of stuff. So when they come to me, there's a couple different ways that they'll come to me, and I go through, the initial questionnaire, either if they filled it out on my website, or if they get to the point where they have a phone call with me. I've got a set of 17 questions that I go through. Now they're all in my mind. I don't need that list because I know that there's four key questions on there, and basically is what your income, how much you have for a down payment, two other key questions that help me know right away whether or not I can help them or not. Now, are they being truthful? Well, that's part of the due diligence process, but this is the initial screening. So you get to that point. So, and then when I meet with them, I give them a checklist. I explain the program, all that sort of stuff. And then they start, from that checklist, they start submitting stuff to me, right? I don't really do any real work until they've done some work and they've submitted material to me. So that's where I get to this sheet where basically what I'm doing is I'm qualifying them and I go through this process. So I'm going to go through this. Now, some of you have got a lot of experience. You're going to go, yeah, 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 know that, know that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining what these are, but more so just kind of stories of my experiences, right? So, um, yeah, so the first one here, let's see if I can read it. Obviously applicants. And then the first two are current landlord and previous landlord. This is important. Now, I've had tenants that I've wanted to get out of my property and they've gotten into another property, but their landlord never called me up. So either they were lazy or the tenant didn't give them my name and number or they gave them someone else or whatever. So another instance, I mean, I've been doing this for 16 years, so I've got lots of ugly stories to tell about tenants. And so I had this one couple, and wow, let's just leave it at that. Wow. How do I get these people out as quickly as possible? Legally, ethically, morally, all that sort of stuff. They wanted out too, um, for different reasons than why I wanted them out. So they found another place. They moved on, and I was so happy to see them leave. And 2 months later, I got a phone call from a lady I'd never met before, and she said, "Are you Cam of such and such company?" I said, "Yep." It's like, so I've inherited some of your old tenants, and uh, can you help me? Is like, well, tell me. I had no idea who they were talking about, and so she told me. It's just like right away. It's like, oh man, because they were doing the same things that they were doing with me. They're doing to this new landlord. This landlord was just lazy and didn't call me. She had my number, and so don't be like that. So I like specifically on a landlord reference check. I prefer to talk to the previous landlord, right? Because the previous landlord's got nothing to lose. Previous landlord is like, yeah, I had them and don't rent to them, and so I prefer to talk to them. Now I've gotten a little bit wiser. When I think that maybe this is a fake landlord, I'll throw in a couple off the cuff questions. And one of them might be, so if let's say that my tenants, obviously, like if I'm questioning them already, there's a potential problem, right? If I've got to question whether or not this is a real landlord or not, that's a red flag. But if the people that are applying to come into one of my properties doesn't have a dog, I'll throw out a question like, yeah, their dog is so cute. What's their dog's name again? To throw them off, right? It doesn't always work, but some sort of question like that either they do have or they don't have, ask the reverse question and just see what happens, see how they respond with that. So when I'm talking to landlords, I ask a bunch of open-ended questions. And probably, obviously, how did they keep your property? How are they doing with paying rent and on time? How did the neighbors get along with them? And one open-ended question I ask right at the end, well, there's two. First of all, the one is, this isn't open-ended, but the question is, would you ever rent to them again? Yes or no? Simple question, so if there's a pause, they're thinking about it, or absolutely I'd rent to them. Okay, that's good to know. The final question, open-ended question is, Is there anything else that you think I need to know about? And, give their names. Open, wide open question. Let them think through it. So I'm listening to what they're saying, but also what they're not saying. What are they not saying to me? And that's important. So that's the two things that I do with or the landlords. That's the questions I ask. Now, red flag. This is a really important fact. If you are showing a prospective tenant to your a property, or you're talking on the phone and they start whining and complaining about their current landlord, huge red flag. The reason why I say that is because, you know, no one's perfect. I've had tenants complain about me. I'm not saying I'm perfect landlord. I just have a bunch of experience. But if they've got beefs about their current landlord, they're 99% going to have problems with you. It's I've seen it where I've put clients into my properties that complained about the previous landlord. Sure enough, within sometime within the term, they became a squeaky wheel in one of my properties. So, mental note for yourself: if a tenant or a tenant buyer, as you're doing your due diligence, as you're interviewing them, if they complain about an existing or previous landlord at length, that's a red flag. All right, then on my sheet, I go into references one and two. And obviously, I don't want to talk to friends or family members. I want to talk to people that either they've worked with, volunteered with, neighbors, someone that isn't just going to give them a glowing report no matter what they do. So, all right. And then I go into a little bit more detail, depth on my due diligence. So, one is called, what I call here in Manitoba is the rental tenancy branch. And basically, what that is a cataloged complaint service, if you will. Your state or province will have something similar to it. Now on Facebook, for example, one of the landlord groups here in the city is, they just create a laundry list of clients that they've had trouble with. So it's not searchable. It's not legal to publish those names outside of the rental tenancy branch, which is a provincial. Um, I'm totally blanking on the name. It's a provincial registry. It's what governs rentals in the province, and it's supposed to help both tenants and landlords. Depending on where you're at, it'll be weighted one way or another, right? Ontario, uh, Manitoba, BC are weighted more on the tenancy side. Alberta has been more on the landlord side. In the States, I'm not sure. I mean, there's so many states, but so, anyways, that's a good vehicle to use. Now, the thing is with that is if you've got a tenant that broke your agreement and didn't pay you rent or something, you need to register. You need to file that complaint. That's how that gets registered on such things as the rental tenancy branch service. And whatever province or state you're in, figure out what it is. Google it. Or you can, word of mouth. You can also do that. So that's a really good tool because it gives you some insight into them, right? Not all of these, any one thing is a definite no. But when you're working on this whole sheet, all of it together combines your final decision, right? Because you've got a gut feeling. I mean, that's not even on the sheet, but a gut feeling is really important, right? Because you're entering into a relationship with these people, whether you like it or not. But when you give them your keys, they're responsible for a large part of the property that you own. Do you want to have a relationship with these people? All right, and then I go into Google is fantastic. Type their names. Now, part of the process up front is I get like I take a picture of their driver's license or some other piece of government issued ID, and so that I can do searches on them. And so that happens with Google, as well as again here in Manitoba, we've got what's called Court of Queen's Bench. So if someone's been sued or sued somebody, it gets registered on this. Again, not a telltale sign because anybody who's had a divorce will be on that. In your province or state, it'll be called a little bit different, but it's again by your provincial or state government. They'll have this site. It's all public knowledge. And but so lots of people that I've searched come up, and it's often a divorce, but there's also other things that come up that right. So you'll see if they've been sued by another landlord. And again, you don't know all the details of these things, but it goes into your hopper of okay, what is this, right? So if it's a divorce order, obviously I'm not going to talk to them about that. But I had one client that uh, looked good, super aggressive on trying to close the deal really fast. And that's fine. I get it. Some people need to move quickly, but it was a bit of a flag. So when I went onto that Queen's bench, I noticed that they were sued by a national insurance company. That's you don't see that very often. And so that was a huge flag for me. So in the end, I declined that couple, that family, and it wasn't just that one thing, but that was definitely a big piece. It was a whole bunch of things, their rental, track record, but all these things are awesome tools. Facebook is an amazing tool for this stuff, right? You search up people and you look at their friends, you look at the posts they have. So, I've had some really nice people apply, but then the pictures that they post is like, I don't want that sort of activity going on in my property, right? Again, not the final straw, but if there's 15 Harleys parked out front and there's a ton of people in the house in your picture and stuff like that, that's a red flag to me, right? It's okay if you drive a Harley, but 15, come on, that's no good. So when I get through that list there, and what I'm going to do is, if you got questions, you can start putting them in. Reference what I was talking about at the time because this Facebook comment section is about a minute behind. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play catch up once I've kind of gone through this sheet, okay? And then I'll answer the question. So ask a question and say, in reference to, here's my question. All right. So with this, all right. So I've gone through this section here. And so then I'm also looking, for proof of income, employment verification, credit check, tax notice of assessment, right? These are all verification items. And then I go on to the end where, do I have copies of the photo ID, driver's, SIN number, car insurance? Okay, that's good. MB Health. And then if they're approved or not. So this sheet I use for both my regular tenants on just my normal buy, rent, and holds, as well as I use it for my tenant buyers. I mean, here it's specifically for rent own, and here it says, on that line, continue for RTO, but I do use the exact same sheet. I just stroke that out. I use the exact same sheet for when I'm qualifying a regular tenant for my buy, rent, and holds. So that's basically the process I go through to find great tenants. Now, have bad tenants slip through the process? Absolutely. And learn from it. I had this one guy jump into our program, nicest guy, and when he moved into the house, the first thing he did was he set up his shrine to alcohol. I'm not opposed to drinking, but this was a shrine, and it was the first thing to go in. It's like, that's just kind of interesting. And what is interesting is after that point, once he moved in and settled, he was a different dude. And I don't know if it was alcohol or what, or if he was, trying to play me for a fool through the process. But this guy became a real thorn in the flesh. Ended up leaving. Fortunately, he left the program within 6 months, which I was happy about. But what could I have done differently on that? I don't really know. I mean, one of the things I do like to do is I like to get into people's homes. You know, I like to see how they live, right? So, one thing that well, actually, three things I will try to do. I will try to myself or get someone to do a drive by where they currently live. What does it look like? Okay. Second thing is, can I get a peek in their car? What does the inside of the car look like? Because the inside of the car is probably a good representation of what the inside of the house is going to look like. Ideally, I want to get into their house and I want to see how they live. Do they live cleanly or messy? And so for example, I had this one tenant buyer that had very low funds to put down. I was really hesitant. But then, we kept on talking and they were able to, they only put down $3,000, which is a very small amount, but they were able to pay $700 above the fair market rent. So I was like, okay, that got my attention, right? $700 cash flow above the rent. And so we kept on talking, really nice people, gainfully employed, met them at their house and they had rented this house for like 7 years. It was a show home. They had two dogs, well behaved. You couldn't smell that there was dogs in the house, and the house was a show home. Like I was sold at that point. So if you can see how they live prior to getting into your house, um, that is really good. Now, your maybe one of your first questions is what about COVID? It's like, you know what? Housing is an essential service. And so if people are resistant to me coming in their house besides COVID. But I've filled hum, homes in the last 12 months during COVID, and I've been able to get into people's houses. And I'm really casual about it. I wear a mask, all that sort of stuff. But I get to see how they live, and that's so key, right? And but people who are really hesitant for me to come in their house, that's another flag for me. Like, why not? And so that served me really well. There's been a couple key individuals that I was in their house prior to them coming into my property. I wasn't super impressed, and they treated my house even worse. And so I've learned the hard way on that stuff. So, yeah, if you can experience inside their car, inside their house, that sort of stuff, even Facebook photos of their house, right? Like on the inside, that's really good. But these are all key things that I put together on this sheet. Now I can get through this sheet really quickly now because of lots of experience and but that's what I do. So I'm gonna kind of stop it there. I'm gonna cap it there. And what are your questions on this? And just file them into there. Make sure that you uh, reference your question to what I was talking about so that I'm not guessing. So let me jump in. There is a couple questions here. All right. All right. So Kyle asks, do you have an income to rent ratio that you target for typical rentals? We use a 3-to-1 rule. Wondering about others. So what I do is I use the same number that the banks are using, right? That's the difference between GDS and TDS. So if you're familiar with how banks qualify people for mortgages, they look at the gross debt servicing, basically what they can afford for housing costs versus their income, right? So if someone makes $100,000, depending on your bank, depending on rules are kind of changing all the time. That's anywhere between 30 and 36% of their gross income is what they can use for housing. So that's a different way of approaching your 3-to-1 rule, Kyle. And so that's a GDS. TDS is total debt servicing. So that includes everything else, including uh, car loans, other loans. And this is where often people get into trouble because they're in a lot of debt and their TDS is above 45, which makes it really difficult. Banks like to see you below 40 or 45 total debt servicing, and they want you to be anywhere between 30 and 36% or lower for gross debt servicing on your property. Kyle also asks, do you ever ask cosigners in what situation has been useful? Um, yes. Uh, so if I've got someone who's new to Canada and they've got no track record of financial stuff, but they've got someone who's, sponsoring them or hosting them. I might get them to co-sign. A parent, right? I have had parents co-sign for students who have never lived out of the house before. Um, in a rent-own situation, yes, we've done that lots of times, and it just increases their buying power. So, and I've done situations where like an adult, like a parent with an adult child, will go in on a home together. That's quite common, especially newer immigrants. You'll see multi generation family get into home ownership, right? So I've got many clients who, mom and dad are in their 60s and they're working here, and their kids are in their 30s and they've got their own children, and so they go in on it together. Now, you don't want to really want to have more than two people. That gets a lot more complicated. I had one family where, you know, um, two of the adult kids were working. Both mom and dad were working as well, and then a couple other children in the house. Actually, it was three generation because the grandchild was in the house as well. Uh, so I didn't put them all on the lease, right? When you're getting into lease, you want to have as few people responsible on it, but then list everybody else down below. Because um, if you've got two people on the lease and you need to serve them, you need to serve both of them, and that becomes problematic. You just really want to have one person that, if for whatever reason you need to serve them in any sorts of matter, either in the current rental or down the road, you want to be able just to have to locate one of them and not two or three different people, right? So there's up and downsides to both of that scenario. Okay, so Michael asks, this might be slightly off topic. Where have you found to be the best place to market towards finding tenant buyers? Yeah, that's a great question. I talked about it up front in terms of today I wasn't going to go into a lot of the marketing. You know what? Especially when you're starting out, you you will try a whole bunch of different spots. When I started out, Kijiji was great. I know for other people, Craigslist has been great. Facebook Marketplace has really increased their presence in this whole realm, and they actually Facebook Marketplace gives you better data than Kijiji, and you got to pay on Kijiji. So there's that. Interacting on landlord groups, Facebook landlord groups in your area really helps. So it's really about finding a niche that works for you, and but posting your ads consistently and regularly, keep bumping them up, and that's a good way to do that, Michael. Peter asks, do you look how well clean they are dressed? Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, that is definitely not a deal breaker in any way. But if they're schleppy and they got cat hair all over them, that's just an indicator. Doesn't mean they're good or bad. I had, this is really early on in my career. We did a burr on a duplex, and it was a two bachelor, and we created it into two bedrooms, and we spent a ton of money, a ton of time, and I was super pleased with it. Got a tenant into the property. She seemed very nice, but she lived in a town an hour away. I didn't get in their property, so her and her mom moved in. Okay, I checked majority of the boxes. I mean, I didn't have this sheet at the time, but I felt pretty good about it. And so they moved in, and a week later, I had to go in for something. Either they called me or I went there or something, and my heart broke. I mean, when you do your first reno like this, and you're so proud of it, and then you get hoarders moving into your property that I could barely walk through the hallway. There was like they were in there a week, and there was garbage bags everywhere, like in some spots up to here. There was a path from the front door to the kitchen to the bathroom, and that was a tough day for me. So I'm trying to remember what this gal looked like, and I think she looked great. So yeah, Peter, that's a good question. Again, it's not a telltale, but I mean, uh, lots of animal hair on them. That's a pretty good indicator for sure. So, Glenn, So, do you use property management lease options? Do you use a property management company for lease options not local? That's a great question. I don't. Most of my lease options are honestly here. There's just so much opportunity here. I don't really need to go out. Now, absolutely, you could do this. Now, what I find with my own rent to own clients is that they are all my on site property managers, right? Essentially, they're paying me for the opportunity to look after my property, which is awesome, right? When they pay me the option fee of 200 or 700, they're essentially paying me to look after the property. So when they get in my property, I give them a new homeowner's manual that teaches them how to care for the property. Plus, there's a whole bunch of additional liability signatures that I get from them at that point. Now, in there, I talk about doing triannual visits. That doesn't need to be me. So depending on how you set it up, I know, Glenn, you've got some out of province, out of country. Ideally, what I do is I will pay someone just to do the triannual visit for me, right? I give them my form, all the things to look for, all the things to observe, right? And so I'll pay them a one time fee just for going in, chatting with the owners, doing a walkthrough, give me a smell report. Honestly, it's a good one. A smell report, is it musty, damp, smoke, any other smells that are off? Maybe there's a sewer backup that they don't know about, but you walk in, you go, yeah, there's a problem here, right? All that sort of stuff. So I set it up so that I just send someone in. I paid them a per time service fee, and that's really all I needed. And now, especially with the growing acceptance with Zoom doing stuff like this, you can do a lot of your meetings like this with your tenant buyers in terms of, with their credit and next steps, qualifying them for that. But if you can have somebody on the ground, rather than paying a property management company 10% a month for something that, I don't typically need because of the way I set up my tenant buyers, you can, if you've got a bunch in that area, you just set up a person uh, to do this on a per fee basis, and do the initial walkthrough with them, but you coach them, you teach them how to do it to your spec. So I do it that way here, even locally, rather than paying a property management company. Part of the problem with property management companies, unless if they're rent-own specific, property management companies treat homes and tenants very differently. They want to bill everything out, and I get it. That's how they make money, all that sort of stuff. Um, but the hopefully when you set up your rent-own client, you set them up in such a way that their mindset is that they want to take care of the property. They want to keep it in as great shape and or better, which I've got in my contract. They actually initial that I promise to keep this property in as good shape or better, right? And I get them to sign that because they need to know that they are responsible for the property. All right. Let's see here. Brendan will push Cam to do another live on the marketing topic. Yeah, I've seen a couple comments on that already. Um, yep, hoarders. It's you know what? Finding hoarders in a property that's not yours, that's a great opportunity, right? You can help tired and frustrated landlords with those. And I've helped a ton of tired and frustrated landlords when they didn't know what to do with their tenants in their hoarders, or if you're buying a property, and notes on those ones, the smellier the property, likely the more profit that you're gonna make. So get some Vic sticks and shove them up your nose and have a face mask, and you're off to the races. All right, Lena asked a question: is there someone on here who does rent on another province where you live and might be willing to chat with me offline? So yeah, I think Glenn Sutherland does that. He's in this group. Lena, I was trying to think if there's anybody else. If there's anybody else does that, put up your hand or message Lena directly. That'd be great. Actually, let's, if you could have the conversation on this group on the rent to own real estate investing, so that way other people can learn, that would be primo. I'd appreciate that. And so would everybody else, because we're all learning here, right? So let's do that. Yeah, Lena's asking, is there someone in Edmonton? I mean, I know Michael's there. I know some other people are there, but Michael's doing some stuff with rent own. So Michael might be a good partner for you, Lena, to do the initial walkthrough. I'm sorry, Michael. I'm not trying to speak for you, but let's see if we can network together. So yeah, awesome. So Glenn's got his email address there. Again, if you guys can have the conversation in this group, that would be that would be awesome for us all to learn from and grow. Because I think it's a growing trend, right? I know people, especially who live in much higher uh, income, much higher price income properties, you'll do fewer rent owns in your region just because there's less people at those higher price points. It can be done and it has been done. But I know people, in Ontario as well as Vancouver that are looking to do these remotely, um, either in the province or in a lower price city center, like somewhere in the prairies, right? Uh, you know, so yeah, awesome. Any other questions from you guys? Did you learn anything new that you can implement? That's really my hope in this because, as I look across this list of people that are in here, we got some people that are brand new to real estate investing. We've got some people who are experienced in real estate investing, brand new to rent own, and some people are super experienced. And it's my goal that we can all learn from each other, all learn something new, and spur each other on. Right? I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The biggest thing in this whole thing is to take regular, consistent action. And that's how you get the results. That's how you see the results. So, how far back, Peter asks, how far back do you travel? How far out do you travel from home to check tenant buyers out? You know, uh, when I was starting out and I was, trying to get my first 6 to 10 done, and I had, that's all I was doing at the time. I would travel a little bit further. And it really just depends on your thing. How motivated you are. If you've got other red flags, if you've got a property, if it's property first, and you've got no strong leads, and you got one lead that's, yeah, it could work, might not work, and you're on, then yeah, I would drive an hour, check them out, go for a road trip, grab a coffee, listen to some audiobooks, and make a fun day out of it or whatever. But so I will do that. I have done that. But if I've got 5 people vying for one property, and they're like fourth on the list, and no, I won't go check that out. So yeah, all right. Lena asked, would you mind recapping the RTB checklist that you mentioned earlier? Recapping the RTB check through. So, are you talking about this list, or are you talking about the rental tenancies branch that I talked about? Not sure. So, if it was rental tenancies branch, Lena, you're in BC, and you got some stuff in Alberta as well. Each of those provinces have got their own. Just Google that, or jump in this group and ask the question as well, and we can put it out there. We can put out there for each province. So rental tenancies branch is what we call it here in Manitoba. In Ontario, it's called what's the name of that? Each province has got its own name. Basically, they all do the same thing. So, all right, yeah, raises Kareen. Absolutely, due diligence is key. And I know that if you were here on the whole thing, you heard about my process, and then going through this list, it might feel a bit overwhelming. But you'll thank yourself afterwards, and then once you do it a number of times, it really becomes second nature, and you can whip through this stuff really quickly, actually. So, all right. So this will be posted back in the group. If you've got any other questions, post in the group. Let me know how I can help further. Thanks so much for jumping on today. It's been a great questions. I love the diversity of the questions. I love you chipping in and giving your opinions as well as asking questions. This is our learning community together. So awesome. Have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon.